There's a particular kind of courage we see when a woman chooses to walk alone, to stand unaccompanied by a man, in a world that demands companionship in certain forms. A woman who walks alone without a husband is, in the eyes of many, a puzzle, an anomaly. Society doesn't always know what to make of her, and oftentimes neither does she. Yet, this woman alone in her journey presents us with a powerful reflection of independence, resilience, and strength. Consider the expectation placed upon her. From the moment a girl begins to develop an understanding of the world around her, there's an underlying message that she must be attached, that her worth is inextricably tied to the presence of another. She is taught, consciously or unconsciously, that her value is contingent upon the role she plays in a relationship. Whether in the form of the expectation that she'll marry, or that she'll be fulfilled by the presence of another, her sense of self is so often wrapped up in the image of partnership. The woman who walks alone defies this, and in doing so challenges these deeply ingrained norms. To walk without a husband is not simply about the absence of a man. It's a refusal to adhere to a prescribed narrative about what it means to be whole, to be valuable. It is, in its own way, an act of reclamation. In this act, she does not discard men or relationships, but rather she redefines herself on her own terms. She asserts that she does not need to be validated by another person to justify her existence or her worth. This isn't to say that walking alone is always a straightforward path. It isn't. Society often holds a woman who is without a husband in a peculiar position. There are questions, stares, assumptions, sometimes pity, sometimes judgment. There's an unspoken narrative that she has somehow failed, that something must be missing, but is it truly missing? Is the woman without a husband really without something that others have? Or is it that she has simply chosen to live a life where her value is not defined by the presence or absence of someone else beside her? I often wonder about the strength it takes to endure this. Not because she's weak, but because the pressure to conform is powerful. To be strong is not merely about overcoming external obstacles, it's also about resisting the internal pressure to succumb to societal expectations. When a woman walks alone, she has, in some ways, confronted the very foundation of these expectations and rejected them. She's chosen not to chase validation in the conventional sense. She's chosen to walk her own path, even though it might be lonelier, more challenging, or harder to understand. This woman who is walking alone must also wrestle with the narratives inside herself. There are moments, of course, of doubt, of reflection, when she wonders whether she's made the right choice, whether the emptiness of solitude is worth the freedom it grants. These are not insignificant moments, they're pivotal moments of growth. The question she faces isn't whether she's missing something, but rather whether she's capable of standing on her own. These quiet moments of self-reflection provide opportunities to rebuild, to reassert, and to grow into a stronger version of herself. To be alone is not to be incomplete. The woman who walks alone isn't missing anything, she's whole. She doesn't need a partner to fulfill her. She walks not because she's waiting to find something, but because she has already found herself. And this is where true power lies, not in finding someone else who validates her existence, but in understanding that her existence is valid in its own right. It's in walking alone that a woman learns the true depth of her own character, the breadth of her resilience. She learns how to navigate life not by relying on someone to guide her, but by becoming her own compass. This is an arduous journey, filled with moments of doubt, pain, and questioning, but it's also the most authentic journey she could ever take. It's an exploration of who she is when all external influences are stripped away. When we talk about women, especially women who walk alone, we often fail to acknowledge the internal battles they face. Society judges them from the outside, but it's the inner battles, the ones no one sees, that often shape their lives most. To navigate the world as a woman without the shield of a husband or partner means to face the world directly, to confront the judgments and the assumptions that others have placed upon her. But there's a strange freedom in this as well. For when a woman stands alone, she doesn't need to conform to any narrative. She doesn't have to fit anyone else's expectations of her. She becomes the author of her own story. It's not easy. It's not simple. In fact, it might be one of the most difficult paths a woman can take. But it's important to recognize that in walking this path, she is not a failure. She is not a victim. She is a woman who has found the courage to live according to her own principles, her own needs, and her own desires, free from the pressure to conform. She does not walk alone because she has no choice. She walks alone because she has made a conscious decision to live life on her own terms. In doing so, she redefines what it means to be a woman. She redefines what it means to be strong. And she redefines what it means to be whole. To walk alone is not to be lonely, though it can be solitary. It is to embrace the complexity of life, to take ownership of your own journey, and to have the courage to exist authentically in a world that constantly tries to tell you who you should be. Perhaps, then, the woman who walks alone isn't just an individual woman at all. She is a symbol of what it means to resist the societal forces that push and pull us in all directions. A symbol of strength, of independence, of courage. And in walking that path, she does not simply find herself. She shows the rest of the world what it truly means to stand tall and live life with purpose. As this woman walks, she teaches us something profound, not just about her own experience, but about the nature of human existence itself. There's a myth, an assumption, that life is only complete when it's shared with others. But the reality is more nuanced. The woman walking alone embodies the truth that the self can be rich, complex, and complete without external validation or the presence of another person. Her existence, like anyone's, is valid and valuable, whether or not it's tied to a relationship or a conventional partnership. In a way, the very act of walking alone becomes an act of rebellion against the imposed narratives of our culture. It says, I do not need to prove myself to anyone. I am enough as I am, and in this there is an incredible strength. Because what this woman is doing, whether she consciously acknowledges it or not, is she's living outside the bounds of a social construct. She is not seeking approval from a system that tells her she must fulfill a particular role. She is creating her own role. She's charting her own course. And that is the essence of true freedom. But it's important to understand that freedom in this context does not come without cost. The woman who walks alone must deal with the expectations of others, the sometimes harsh judgment of a society that is quick to label her as incomplete or even unworthy. People might tell her that she's missing out, that she's made a mistake. But here's the thing, those voices are based on their own fears and limitations. They project their own insecurities onto her path because they themselves cannot fathom living without the prescribed structure. They cannot see that she is not without, but that she has chosen a path that is different and, in its own way, more difficult, but it is hers. The strength of this woman lies not just in the ability to face the outside world, but also in the way she handles her inner world. There are moments when she is alone with her thoughts, and it is there, in that stillness, where the true test lies. She will wrestle with loneliness, yes, but she will also find clarity. She will confront the fears and doubts that others avoid, and she will emerge from those moments not weaker but stronger. The woman who walks alone has learned, perhaps in painful ways, that her most important relationship is the one she has with herself. She is not looking for someone to save her. She has saved herself by becoming the kind of person who does not need to be saved. And this, perhaps, is where we begin to see the real power of a woman who chooses to walk alone. She is not passive. She is not waiting for something outside herself to change her circumstances. She is actively shaping her own destiny. She is creating herself in real time, making choices not based on the expectations of others, but on the values she has defined for herself. She takes ownership of her life in a way that few are willing to do. She knows at her core that her path is hers to make, and she does not defer to the constraints of social norms or the demands of others. In this way, the woman who walks alone becomes an example for others, especially other women who may feel trapped by the narratives they've been taught. She shows them that they do not have to live according to anyone else's idea of fulfillment. She reminds them that their worth is not measured by their relationship status or by how society perceives them. Her freedom is contagious. The more she walks, the more others see that it is possible to carve a path for yourself, to live a life that is true to your own values and desires, regardless of what others think or expect. But we must also remember that the woman walking alone is not immune to the challenges of life. She faces moments of weakness, times when the weight of solitude feels too much to bear. And yet, it is in those moments that she often finds her greatest strength. The ability to sit with discomfort, to allow yourself to feel the pain of solitude, and to continue moving forward, is a form of resilience that is rarely acknowledged. It's easy to talk about the victories and successes of life, but it's in the quiet, difficult moments when she walks alone that she shows the depth of her character. There is a quiet dignity in the way this woman navigates the world. Her journey is not about seeking attention or validation. She does not walk alone to make a statement. She walks because it is the only way she knows how to live authentically. And that authenticity is what makes her presence so powerful. It is in her honesty with herself, her commitment to staying true to her values, that she becomes a beacon for others who might also feel the pull of societal expectations but lack the courage to resist them. To walk alone is not to be weak, it is not to be incomplete, it is in fact the opposite. It is an acknowledgement of strength of character, of spirit, and of purpose. It is a reminder that we all have the capacity to create a life that is true to our own deepest values, regardless of the pressures from the outside world. The woman who walks alone stands as a testament to the idea that we are more than the roles we are given, more than the narratives we are told to follow. In this journey, there is no final destination. The path itself is the point. The woman who walks alone teaches us that the journey of self-discovery is never linear, that it is a process of constant evolution and reinvention. And perhaps in the end, that's the greatest gift she offers the world, not her conclusions, but the courage to question, to explore, and to live fully according to one's own terms. The woman who walks alone shows us all, in her quiet, steadfast way, that we are all capable of walking our own paths. We don't need to follow anyone else's footsteps to find meaning. We have the power to forge ahead, to redefine what it means to be whole, and to live in a way that is deeply authentic and true to ourselves. What we often fail to see, especially in a world that places so much emphasis on relationships, is that the woman who walks alone is not an isolated figure. She is not cutting herself off from the world or withdrawing into some kind of fortress of solitude. Rather, she is engaging with life in a different, perhaps more profound way. She is learning to rely on herself, yes, but also to interact with the world on her own terms, shaping her own narrative and her own experiences. And in doing so, she becomes a more complete version of herself, not because she has filled some societal role, but because she has embraced the fullness of who she is. There is something incredibly liberating in the act of living without the constant need for external validation. The woman who walks alone is free from the constraints that often come with relationships and expectations. She is free to explore the world around her, to take risks and make decisions that are based purely on her own desires, not because she feels she must conform to the expectations of a partner or society. She can be bold in ways that others might find difficult. Her independence allows her to make choices that are uniquely her own choices, that can be messy, imperfect, and entirely her own to navigate. But this independence doesn't mean that she is alone in the sense of being disconnected. Rather, it means that she is free to connect with others in more meaningful, authentic ways. She is not bound by the limitations of a traditional relationship. She can build connections based on mutual respect, shared values, and deep understanding without the pressure of meeting certain social standards or playing out a prescribed role. In fact, she may form connections that are far more profound and genuine than many of those who conform to societal expectations of what relationships should be. And there is an important aspect of vulnerability that comes with walking alone. The woman who walks alone is not immune to feelings of sadness, loneliness, or longing. She is human, after all. She may experience moments when the weight of solitude feels heavy, when she wishes she had someone by her side. But in embracing those moments rather than running from them, she learns the art of self-compassion. She learns to sit with her emotions, to feel them fully, and to move through them. There is a deep wisdom that comes from this process of self-reflection and emotional acceptance. It is in these moments of vulnerability that she learns the most about herself, about her capacity to endure and to thrive. Moreover, the woman who walks alone teaches us the importance of self-reliance. In a world that often tells us we need others to define who we are, she demonstrates that we can define ourselves. Her strength is in her ability to stand firm in the face of uncertainty, to trust her own instincts, and to make decisions based on her own wisdom. She may not always have the answers, but she has the confidence to ask the questions, to seek the answers in her own time, on her own terms. There is no rush. There is no deadline. There is only the quiet conviction that she is enough, exactly as she is, even in moments of doubt or struggle. It's important to recognize that walking alone isn't always about rejecting relationships. It isn't about turning away from the possibility of partnership or companionship. Instead, it is about choosing to live authentically, to be true to oneself in a world that constantly pressures us to conform to certain ideals. The woman who walks alone is not closing herself off to love or connection. Rather, she is taking the time to understand who she is, what she needs, and how she can show up for others from a place of strength and authenticity. She is not seeking someone to complete her, but rather someone who can walk alongside her in a partnership of equals. In a sense, the woman who walks alone is teaching us how to approach life itself. Life is not about having everything figured out, or about meeting certain milestones that society has laid out for us. It's not about being perfect or conforming to an ideal. It's about embracing the journey however it unfolds and being present in each moment. The woman who walks alone understands that there is no one-size-fits-all path in life. She knows that her journey is hers alone, and she is unafraid to walk it, even when the road is uncertain or less traveled. What she shows us is that we are all capable of walking our own paths. We are all capable of finding our own way, of creating lives that are authentic to our own values and desires. We don't need to follow the expectations of others, nor do we need to rely on others to give our lives meaning. We can find meaning in our own experiences, in our own choices, and in the relationships we cultivate along the way. The woman who walks alone challenges us all to think more critically about what it means to live a fulfilling life. She forces us to question the assumptions we've been taught about what it means to be happy, to be whole, to be successful. She encourages us to look inward, to find the strength within ourselves to live with purpose and authenticity. And perhaps most importantly, she teaches us that the journey is the point, not the destination. When we observe a woman walking alone, we are witnessing more than just an individual's choice. We are seeing a profound act of self-assertion. We are seeing a person who has decided that her life is hers to define, and she will not let the world dictate her worth. She is a living testament to the power of independence, the beauty of self-discovery, and the courage it takes to stand alone in a world that demands conformity. In a world that often asks women to shrink themselves, to follow predefined paths, to be defined by their relationships with others, the woman who walks alone offers a different narrative. She shows us that we can be whole on our own, that we don't need to fit into anyone else's mold to be valuable or worthy. She reminds us that our worth is intrinsic and it is defined by who we are, not by who we are with. So when you see a woman walking alone, don't pity her, don't judge her. Instead, recognize her strength. Recognize the courage it takes to navigate a world that often doesn't understand her. She is not missing something, she is living fully, authentically, and bravely. And in that, she is setting an example for all of us, showing us what it means to walk through life with conviction, to live on our own terms, and to embrace the journey no matter how uncertain it may seem. As we continue to reflect on the woman who walks alone, it's important to understand that her journey is not just personal, it's inherently social. Her decision to walk without the accompaniment of a partner often sparks a conversation, whether spoken or unspoken, about the roles we are expected to play in society. The woman who walks alone invites us to reconsider how we view relationships, independence, and the complex dance between the two. The very fact that she is walking alone challenges the assumption that one's life cannot be fulfilling without companionship. It calls into question the idea that love or marriage is the ultimate form of success, and it opens up the space for a much broader interpretation of what a complete life can look like. We must ask ourselves, why is it that when a woman is alone, there is often a sense of pity or loss attached to her situation? What does this say about our collective understanding of human fulfillment? The truth is, there are many forms of love and fulfillment that do not require the presence of another person to define them. The woman who walks alone is not without connection, nor is she devoid of relationships. She has friends, family, mentors, and even communities with whom she shares herself. She may even have love in her life, just not in the form that society prescribes. In this way, her life is rich and full. Her journey may not include the traditional milestones, but it is full of meaning and authenticity. She has embraced the richness of self-love, self-discovery, and personal growth, things that do not require a partner to be valid or meaningful. In fact, the more one reflects on it, the more it becomes clear that the woman who walks alone has the chance to cultivate a deeper, more profound relationship with herself. She gets the opportunity to reflect on her desires, her dreams, her fears, and her motivations without the influence of another person's wants or needs. She learns how to take responsibility for her own happiness and how to meet her own emotional needs. She becomes a master of her own emotional world, and this is no small feat. By walking alone, she invites a kind of inner exploration that many people, both men and women, may avoid. When you look at this woman, you may see someone who has chosen a life that is more solitary in some ways, but what you might miss is that she is also a person who knows how to be truly present in her own company. She has mastered the art of being alone without being lonely. This is not something that happens overnight, nor is it something that many people ever fully learn to do. It requires an extraordinary level of emotional maturity to be content in solitude, to find peace in your own thoughts, and to trust your own inner compass when the outside world is constantly telling you to go in a different direction. And let's not forget the courage it takes to stand in the face of societal expectations and say, "This is enough. I am enough." It is no small thing to break away from the conventional story that many women are taught, the story that the pinnacle of a woman's life is finding a partner, settling down, and creating a family. For this woman, the journey is about becoming. Not about becoming a part of someone else's narrative. She has embraced the possibility that she can be whole on her own, that her purpose does not lie in fulfilling an external idea of what a woman's life should look like. In doing so, she becomes a model of authenticity for others. There is an underlying truth in her choice that speaks to something deep within us all, the ability to chart our own course, to live without fear of judgment, and to find fulfillment in the process of living, not just in the destination. The woman who walks alone invites others to question their own lives, to ask themselves whether they are living authentically or whether they are merely following someone else's expectations. She shows them that it's possible to live a life that is true to their values and desires, regardless of societal pressure or what others might think. It's a kind of strength that is often overlooked in the modern world, a strength that doesn't come from being loud or assertive, but from quiet persistence and a deep belief in one's own worth. The woman who walks alone is a quiet force. She doesn't need to prove herself to anyone. She is not seeking the approval of others. Instead, she carries herself with a quiet dignity that is rooted in the knowledge that she is enough just as she is. In doing so, she teaches us all to stop chasing validation, to stop looking for someone else to tell us we are worthy, and to start looking within ourselves for the answers we seek. Perhaps the most important lesson the woman who walks alone teaches is the power of choice. She has chosen her path. She has decided that her life will not be dictated by anyone else's standards. She is not following the well-worn road that society has laid out for her, nor is she caving to the pressure to be in a relationship or to fit into a prescribed mold. Instead, she walks the road she has paved for herself, and in doing so, she teaches us that we are all capable of doing the same. In many ways, the woman who walks alone becomes a kind of mirror for all of us, reflecting back the parts of ourselves that we have neglected or buried under the weight of social expectation. She shows us that it is okay to be alone, that it is okay to take time for ourselves, and that it is okay to not follow the traditional paths laid out before us. There is more than one way to live a fulfilling life. The woman who walks alone is proof of that. Her life is rich and full, not because she fits into someone else's narrative, but because she has carved out her own path, and in doing so has found a profound sense of peace and purpose. So when you see a woman walking alone, whether it is through life, through a city street, or through a difficult time, remember that she is not lacking. She is not less than. She is not less than. She is not incomplete. She is walking her own path, and in doing so, she is showing the world what it truly means to live authentically, to embrace one's own journey, and to walk with quiet strength and dignity, regardless of the expectations of others. And in that, she teaches us all a very valuable lesson, that to walk alone is not a weakness but a testament to the power of self-reliance, inner strength, and the courage to live life on one's own terms. The woman who walks alone offers us a powerful reminder of what it truly means to live authentically and on our own terms. She stands as a symbol of strength not because she has followed a prescribed path, but because she has chosen to walk her own, regardless of the pressures and judgments placed upon her. She embodies the courage to face the world without the need for external validation, to explore life's challenges with resilience, and to embrace solitude as a space for self-discovery, growth, and deep inner peace. Her journey is not one of loneliness, but of independence, self-reliance, and the unwavering belief that one's worth is not determined by the presence of another. She teaches us that fulfillment comes not from fitting into society's molds, but from honoring our own desires, values, and purpose. Her choice to walk alone is not a declaration of weakness, but an act of profound strength and affirmation that we are enough as we are, without needing to be completed by another. As we witness her path, let us remember that we too have the power to choose our own way. We are all capable of living life on our own terms, of finding meaning in our journey, and of walking with conviction and authenticity, no matter the expectations of the world around us. The woman who walks alone teaches us that true freedom lies in the courage to define ourselves, to embrace our solitude, and to create lives that reflect our truest selves. So the next time you see a woman walking alone, do not pity her, do not judge her. Instead, recognize her strength, recognize the quiet force she represents. And perhaps in doing so, you will be reminded of your own ability to walk your path boldly and without apology, knowing that in the end, the only person whose approval you need is your own.